Hey, what's up YouTube? Domino Paris 21 here, and I'm back again with the second video of this segment for my tips and strategies to talk about one aspect of guarding. Now, I'm not going to really go over every little detail about guarding and every single situation, but I think this is like one basic strategy when it comes to guarding that I think any player, including beginners, should at least know starting off. Now, as suggested by the title, I'll actually be talking about guarding while it's cheap. Now, what I mean by that is there are times where your opponent, such as you see here with the Spike Brothers field, that they don't have boosters behind every single attacker. So sometimes you're going to be receiving attacks by unboosted units. Now, I'm basically going to go over how to best guard it to help maximize your hand, maintain more shield, and the reason why you want to guard while it's cheap, hence the title. Now, here's one example that I see a lot of misplays at that I feel that a lot of players do that really causes them to lose a lot of games and end up using a lot of shield. Let's take this scenario for instance. I'm the Goku Kagura player. My opponent is of course playing Spike Brothers. Now, let's say that my opponent has no booster behind the Vanguard and he has two columns here. Now, of course, with Spike Brothers, as opposed to other decks, well, actually in conjunction with other decks, most decks now run like 8 crit, 4 draw. That's usually a standard, really. Now, here's one mistake I see players do. So, Spike Brothers decides to attack my Vanguard, unboosted, so it's going to be 10 versus 10. Here's what I see players do. They say no guard. So, here's what happens. So, first check, second check, my opponent spikes a critical trigger. So, critical to Vanguard, and let's get +5 to the maximum. You proceed to take your 2 damage, as such. Now, the problem that you have here is this is going to be potentially swinging for a 15k block, or even just a 10k block if he doesn't want to use a Soul Blast. But let's just say that no one's using their Soul Blast. So he attacks, and let's say you drop a 10, and then this attacks. This is going to be 18 plus 5. This is going to be 23 to the Vanguard. Now at this point you already took 2 damage. You could take the 3rd damage and end up taking 3 damage this turn, or you can block it and end up using 15,000 worth of shield. So let's say we do decide to guard it. So let's say that our limit this turn is to only take 2 damage. So let's say we guard that. So at this point, we used up 25 shield, and we have taken 2 damage. Now, with that in mind, let's play it out a different way to show you guys. So, Spike Brothers attacks with unboosted Vanguard. Here's what you can do. You drop a 10. Because it's 10 versus 10, he would need 2 to pass. Now, at this stage of the game, unless it's a really, really late game and your opponent's in the corner, most players, for the most part, are not going to try and bank 2 triggers on this, especially if it's early game. It's usually not worth it. So, opponent checks, critical trigger. He decides to give it all the critical and +5 to maximum. Second check, Reckless Express. So you successfully block the Vanguard. So that's 10 shield you used. And let's say the opponent attacks with this. Now, of course, this is cheaper than that, and you haven't took any damage yet. So it's expected that you would block this. So you guard it for 10. And this would be 23 crit 2. Now keep in mind you haven't took any damage this turn, so you can afford to take 2 hits because you already blocked 2. So you go ahead and just take 2 damage. Now, here's the difference you're looking at. To take the same damage, I took 2 damage this turn, but I only used 20,000 shield as opposed to using 25. The reason being is, since my opponent attacked with the unboosted Vanguard, I could tell you that 90% of the time, I always throw 10 down. For that reason. It's very simple. That way, you're blocking a Vanguard you're blocking your opponent from trying to just get you a free critical automatically. It kind of forces your opponent to give all effects to another rear guard, and then they have to try and push with that. But if your opponent ever attacks with an unboosted Vanguard, that's a basic strategy you want to do. So as you see here, I saved 5k shield, and we all know, in Vanguard, a lot of games are lost because you never have enough shield at the end. So, I mean, that's 5k shield you saved. Because let's say my opponent did that for a second turn. You go with the same procedures, you saved another 5k shield. So through the course of 2 turns, you have an extra 10,000 worth of shield. That's enough to block one single attack. So if you have that kind of edge over your opponent, you're going to win a lot of games that way. So, unboosted Vanguard units, throw 10 down. Now, here's another scenario I see that players, I think, make mistakes on. Now, let's go ahead and move this booster right behind my Vanguard. So now, you have 1 unboosted rear guard and 2 full columns, with the Vanguard being a full column. Now, so at this stage of the game, let's say maybe you're at 2 or 3 damage or such. Now, your opponent would decide to attack with the maximum without using Soul Blast, so it'll be 11 versus 10. Here's what I see a lot of players do. They end up taking the damage for that attack. And then, Vanguard swings, no guard, and let's just say he hits another critical. Crit plus 5. You proceed to take 2 damage. At this point, you're probably going to be at 4 or 5. And your opponent's going to be swinging. Let's say he doesn't Soul Blast. Let's just say this is swinging for a 15k block. And you give him the 15. So you give him 15. Simple as that. So this turn, you end up taking 3 damage. So let's just say this turn, since your opponent hit a critical, you end up taking 3 damage, and you used up 15,000 worth of shield. Now, let's play it a different way. So, opponent decides to attack unboosted, so it'd be the same. Block for 5. And then opponent attacks with Vanguard. No guard. So, first check, second check, critical trigger, crit plus 5. So you take 2 there, and then you take, so you end up taking 2 from here, and then plus 5 here, and then you swing. So let's say you want to go ahead and just take that. So you essentially just took 3 damage. First, from the previous turn and this turn, you took 3 damage. So both examples, you took the same damage. Now, let's look at the difference again. Now, the first time I showed you, I took 3 damage and used up 15,000 worth of shield because I ended up taking this. I took a critical from the Vanguard, and essentially, I mean, I'm backed in a corner, I have to block this, so I have to drop 15. So, simple as that. Now, with the second time around, the second example, we decided to actually block the unboosted rear guard and decided to take these 2. So you're still taking 3 damage, but I only used 5k this turn as opposed to 15. So as you see, that's an extra 10k I'm going to have for next turn. So at this point, I'm probably going to be at 4 or 5 damage or such. So I'm going to have this extra 10k to help block, just to help block for me. So those are just 2 examples that I see a lot of players do when it comes to just their guarding decisions that really cost them a lot of shield through the course of a few turns or such, that really hurts them in late game because that's this extra shield that they don't have to help block, and that's just more advantage you give your opponent. Now, overall, best advice I always tell everyone is guard it while it's cheap. Like a lot of players that play with me, like for instance, if I ever attack unboosted to somebody, I always tell them, give me 5. That's really where the value of draw triggers come in. Like, draw triggers have a bad rep of having bad shield, but your opponent's not always going to have a full field. Sometimes they're forced to go, sometimes they're forced to attack with something unboosted, Or let's say you have an 11k Vanguard and your opponent's swinging for 15. That's only 5 to block. You know, so if you can give your opponent 5, try and do so. It's cheap. Guard it while it's cheap. Simple as that. Now, sometimes it is appropriate to take the damage, but there has to be a reason why you take a cheap. There has to be a reason why you have to take an attack like that that's so cheap to block. It's simple as that. But yeah, that's basically my tip for you guys. Nice little basic tip, but it's definitely going to help you conserve your hand a little more, get the most out of your shield. That's really what this game is about, is getting the most out of your hand, getting the most out of every card, and really understanding the value of shield. So there you have it, guys. That is my video for, that is my brief discussion on a little bit of an aspect of guarding. Definitely give a thumbs up for the video if this definitely helped you out. And hopefully you guys can continue learning from these kind of videos. Definitely give a thumbs up, leave a comment below, let me know what you guys think of these. Definitely continue to do more. If you guys have any suggestions of any new, maybe new tips or any questions you may have that I can probably address for you guys, definitely, I would love to hear it down below. Where's my other hand? Here you go. Well, other than that, guys, thank you guys for watching. I'll see you guys later.